Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome to chapter 9.2. This is the second lesson of this chapter inshallah. So we're still dealing with quite a bit of vocabulary. Remember, vocabulary is extremely important in this chapter. So today we're talking about how we classify triangles, how do we find unknown angle measures as well. So let's start off with the vocabulary. So when we classify a triangle, there's two ways to classify it. One of the ways is that you have to classify it by angles first, and the second is by sides. So as far as angles are concerned, there is acute triangle. Now the ruling on an acute triangle is that it has three acute angles. What does acute mean? It means that the angle measures are less than, and let me actually write it in red so you can take extra notes on that. Acute basically means less than 90 degrees, but greater than 0 degrees. Okay, so it falls in between 0 to 90 degrees, but not equaling 0 and not equaling 90. So as long as the three angles are less than 90 and greater than 0, then they are called acute. The next one, a right triangle. A right triangle has one right angle. So regardless of what the measures of the other two angles are, it doesn't matter. If it has one right angle, automatically that triangle is called a right triangle. So remember that a right triangle or a right angle is exactly 90 degrees. An obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle. So the other two are going to be acute, but the ruling basically is if it has one obtuse, and obtuse in this case means greater than 90, and it can be 90.5. The minute it's above 90, automatically it's considered obtuse. Okay? Now the second way that we classify a triangle is by side lengths. So sometimes they'll give you side lengths, sometimes they won't. But we're going to teach you all the rules as far as definitions are concerned and how it applies. Now in an equilateral triangle means equal, right? So that means three congruent sides. So all the side lengths in that triangle are exactly the same length. And then the angle measures are also congruent as well. All three of them will be congruent. So three congruent sides, three congruent angles. And we're talking about the measures. Now in an isosceles triangle, the condition is that two of the sides are congruent. Two of the sides have equal lengths, and then two of the angles are also congruent in measure. And then a scaling triangle, it has no congruent sides, no congruent angles. So a scaling triangle will always have different angle measures, different side length measures, and that's how you can determine if it's scaling or not. Now, the triangle sum theorem. Triangle sum theorem basically means when you add up the sum of all the interior angles of a triangle, which are three, okay? So the sum of three angles in a triangle will always equal exactly 180. So make sure that you use 180 as the basis of trying to solve for unknown measures, and that's called the triangle sum theorem. So what are you expected to do in this chapter? Let's come this way to this board now. And I know that my chandelier gives a lot of brightness, but inshallah it's not bothering you anymore. So the instructions here classify by angles and by side lengths. So remember, when you classify a triangle, always go by the angle measure first. And then the second thing that you do is you go by side lengths. So the list that we have over here is what we're going to use. And maybe we'll just keep the words themselves so we can have a basis. Now let's go to the first example. So notice the triangle. The first thing I notice is that it has a 90-degree angle. This angle right here, that little box indicates that it's 90 degrees. Now another important thing of the triangle is that they showed you these tick marks. What those tick marks mean is that those two sides are equal to each other. So based on angle measure, okay, because remember we name it by angle first. Look at this, angles and then sides. Based on angle, I know it's a right triangle. So I'm going to call it that it's right. Now, based on side lengths, even if they did not give us a measure for the side lengths, you still have to infer some of the information that they're giving you. And these two tick marks, because that's what they're called, usually in a geometry book, they'll be red. Sometimes you find them in blue and green. But for the most part, they're usually in red. These tick marks indicate that these two sides are congruent. And if we go to a list of all our vocab, we're talking about sides. It's either equilateral, isosceles, or scaling. The one that says two congruent sides is isosceles. So this type of triangle is called a right isosceles. Okay? Now look at this triangle right here. So the angle measures are 80, 30, and 70. All of the angle measures are different. Okay? So let's go by angle measures first. Since we have 80, 70, and 30, all of them are less than 90. Since all of them are less than 90 but greater than 0, we know it's an acute triangle. Okay? So this is going to be called acute. Now, based on the sight lengths, now they didn't give us any sight lengths, but we know by definition that scaling triangle, this right here, scaling triangle, the definition is no congruent sides, no congruent angles. So if the angles are not congruent, there's none that are congruent, then automatically it defaults into a scaling. So this is called an acute scaling triangle. Okay? Now look at this next example. On that example, they don't give you angle measures, they don't give you side length measures, but they do give you the tick marks. So what you're supposed to infer, all three sides are equal. So if they're all equal, what can we say? It's an equilateral triangle, right? So equilateral triangle, in this case, it has three congruent sides, three congruent angles. Since it is three angles, and remember that a triangle equals 180 degrees. And if we divide it by the three angles, each angle measure is going to be 60 degrees. So this angle is 60, this angle is 60, and that angle is 60. So now we know it's an acute triangle. And by default, since all the sides are congruent based on the information given to us, then we know it's an acute equilateral triangle. All right? So that's the first part of the lesson. Second part of the lesson is going to be that you have to write and solve an equation to determine x. So let's get started on that. Now you did a little bit of it yesterday when we were talking about angle measures with supplementary and complementary, but we're doing the same thing, only now we're going to be using a triangle. Now, most important part, remember, a triangle, the angle measures equal 180. So it's write and solve an equation. And determine x degrees, okay? So let's say that we give you a triangle that looks like this. And of course, I'm not perfect, guys, but the information that I'm going to be giving you, I'm giving it to you as close as possible to a real issue. And remember, I told you, never assume anything. Unless if this box is not in there, never assume that it's a right triangle. But I drew that box, so now you know it's a right triangle. So this one, we're going to say that this angle measure is 3x degrees. This angle measure is 6x degrees. And they want you to write an equation that will help you solve for x, okay? So remember, all three angle measures added together equal 90. Now, I know that they didn't give us, all three angle measures equal 180, the sum of them. Now, I know that they didn't give us a value here, but because of that little box there, it equals 90 degrees. So when we're writing our equation, here we go. 3x degrees plus 6x degrees plus 90 degrees equals 180, because the three sums will equal that 180. Now, if I want to start isolating my variable, I start condensing and combining like terms. 3x plus 6x is the same thing as 9x. And then the rest of the equation just drops down because I'm not doing anything with it. The only thing I combined was my 3x and my 6x. Now, before I touch my variable, I need to get rid of that 90. How do I get rid of a plus 90? The opposite of plus 90 is minus 90. So I'm going to subtract 90 from both sides. I'm left with 9x is equal to 180 minus 90 is 90. And then the last step, what's happening between 9 and x? It's multiplication. Opposite of multiplication is division. So I divide both sides by 9. Final answer, x degrees is equal to 10 degrees. Now, very important, guys, your two answers are the equation, that's the first part. The second one is your final answer. Don't forget that you have to have degrees on every single term, and you have to have degree on your final answer as well. Not only on the variable, but also on the value. Okay? Let's try another one. We're still writing and solving an equation. And you have to know and understand how all of these triangles work. Okay? So here we go. This is the information given to you. You've got 2 tick marks. What should that tell you? That means these two sides are congruent. Okay? And then they're going to tell you this is 110 degrees. This one right here is x degrees. And this one right here is x degrees. So we have 2 congruent sides, 2 congruent angles. That means that this is based on angle measures. That's obtuse. And it's isosceles because of the 2 congruent sides, 2 congruent angles. So, but it's not asking us to classify. So the only thing that we're doing right now is solving for x by writing an equation. So let's go. X degrees plus x degrees plus 110 degrees equals 180. So here is your equation. Now the common mistake that kids make on this, how you're going to lose points in my class, if you just write x plus x, okay, that's 2x, and you write 2x plus 110 equals 180. Remember, we're talking about a triangle. I need to see 3 different things because it has 3 angles. That's angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, okay? So don't combine everything in my equation. First, write the equation as best as possible, then start simplifying afterwards. So x plus x is considered 2x. Everything else drops down. So 2x plus 110 equals to 180. Now, before I touch the variable, I need to get rid of that 110. What's happening between 2x and 110? Addition. Opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 110 from both sides. I'm left with 2x, and then 180 minus 110 is equal to 70. Next step, divide both sides by 2, because the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. X degrees is equal to 35 degrees. And it's as simple as that, guys. Okay? Now, let's try one more. I'm hoping, inshallah, that you're finding the lecture easy. And let's try this one. What if you have a triangle such as this? Okay? Can we tell if it's a right triangle? Not really. Remember, if you don't see the box, you don't know what it is. So here are the angle measures that they're giving you. This one is going to be 30 degrees. The one over here is going to be 5x degrees. And the one up there is 95 degrees. Okay? So let's go ahead and write our equation. And by the way, guys, it doesn't matter which order you put them, whether you put the numerical values first and then the variable. I do prefer the variables first, but I'm not going to take off points if you don't. So first of all, 5x degrees plus 30 degrees plus 95 degrees equals 180. Here is my first answer. Then the next step, remember, combine anything that is alike. 30 plus 95 are like terms because they don't have, a variable with them. So 30 plus 95 equals to 125. So I'm going to drop my 5x, and then I'm going to write 125 because 30 plus 95 is 125. It equals 180. Okay? Now, next step, I need to get rid of 125. Opposite of adding 125 is subtracting 125. Cancels out. I'm left with 5x, and then do the math. 180 minus 125 is equal to 55. Then the last step, what's happening between 5x, 5 and x, sorry, it's multiplication. Opposite of multiplication is division. So divide both sides by 5. X degrees is equal to 11 degrees. So here are our 2 answers. Now, the last part of the lesson, And these are gonna apply a little bit more to real world problems, so be careful with them. You'll get images though, and it'll help you a little bit more to read. Sometimes you'll see sight lengths, sometimes you'll see angles, sometimes you'll see both. So what they want you to do here is classify by angles, because remember, we always classify by angles first and sides. That's the first thing you need to do, so you need to classify it. And then they're also asking you, find the value of x. And remember, it's always x degrees. So let's go for our example. So we've got this triangle. Ooh, I know it looks a little bit crooked, guys, but I'm trying my best. All right. And we're gonna say that this is 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet. Now, I haven't been given angle measures, right? But based on the sight lengths, okay, we already know that they're all different, so we know it's scaling by sight lengths, but let's start adding angle measures to this. All right? First of all, if I put that box right there, we know that automatically is 90 degrees. This one, we're gonna say that it is 33 degrees, and then this one, and by the way, I've been writing all of them in red, sorry about that. So this one is 33 degrees, this one is x degrees, and that's the one that we don't know. Okay, so before you classify it, make sure that you do the math just to double check. So if I am classifying by angles and sides, let me find the value of x first. So x degrees plus 33 degrees plus 90 degrees equals 180 degrees. And remember, I can add 33 and 90. 33 plus 90 is equal to 123. So x plus 123 is equal to 180. Then subtract 123 from both sides. Minus 123 cancels out. And then do the math. 180 minus 123 is 57 degrees. So one of my answers is x degrees is equal to 57. The second one, don't forget, because especially the word problems, it's going to be in a little bit of a paragraph form, and you might forget. You know, you might just, I see a picture, let me solve for x. Sometimes within the word problem, it's asking you for 2 answers. So first of all, it's a right triangle based on that right angle. And we know it's scaling because all the sight lengths, not only all the sight lengths, but all the angle measures. This one's 90, this one's 33. Based on our information, that's 57. So what kind of triangle is this? This is a right scaling triangle. So this is our second answer. So inshallah, you found the lesson to be easy. Just remember, you need to memorize your vocab. It's extremely important. Please write it in your notebook, because you can always refer back to it instead of having the video open all the time. If you have any questions, join us in class, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.